considered many of us to be a cult of personality, the Republican Party, in the era of Trump, and that probably still holds true. It's hard to escape the conclusion that it's also a cult of death.
Joining me now to respond to all of this, Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick. Great to see you today. Let's do it in reverse order. I'm going to ask you to respond to Beto O'Rourke there while it's still fresh in everybody's mind.
Well, his outlandish comments seldom deserve a response, quite frankly. He is a cult leader himself, and talking about this death cult or attacking the governor of the state of Texas in the way he does over guns or open borders, he really is a person who has a head full of nonsense. I really don't pay attention to him, quite frankly, Harris.
We do pay attention to the President of the United States, though.
Yes.
And he called what you're doing in Texas and what's happening in the state of Mississippi Neanderthal thinking. What is your reaction to that?
Well, what I would call Neanderthal thinking would be Governor Newsom in California telling his people not to come out of their cave for a year. I would call Neanderthal thinking the Democrat Governor Cuomo of New York sending patients with COVID to nursing homes where he covered up 12,000 people dying. And as Governor Abbott mentioned, I would call Neanderthal thinking of allowing people to cross the border illegally with COVID, tested positive, and put them on a bus. And of course, that word Neanderthal would come to the president very quickly, because if you look up the definition of it, it says Neanderthal were hunter-gatherers. And of course, that would be the name of his son, who gathers millions for his family with countries around the world. Secondly, he didn't look at the facts. Texas did nothing new. We have 15 other states: Alaska, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Iowa, Missouri, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Let Joe Biden try to remember that off the top of his head. He couldn't get by the second state. 15 other states don't have a mask mandate. We just joined that group. And Harris, look, we're looking at this very carefully. We're not telling people not to wear masks. We're just removing a mandate. I spoke to 150 seniors last night in Georgetown, Texas, north of Austin. 2 people that I saw had masks on. When I travel around the state, there are people who just don't wear a mask. And there's no sanction to them, even though there was a mandate, or at least it is through next Wednesday. But there were no sanctions. People made their decisions on their own. And I travel in many places where everyone has a mask. We're not saying don't do it. In fact, at the Capitol, we're saying we strongly suggest you wear a mask. I wear a mask when I'm around people out of respect to them if they want me to. We're saying to people, still social distance. We're just not taking away the freedom and liberty in Texas from people that they are doing in Democrat states, and Joe Biden wants to do. But again, Harris, I go back to the president. How dare him attack Texas for our policies when he is allowing the border to be overrun by people coming in here by the hundreds, by the thousands, and testing positive and coming on a bus to your state, wherever you happen to live in the United States of America? What a hypocrite.
Yeah, New Jersey actually is on the list of where they'll be coming.
Pardon?
Yeah, New Jersey, where I live, is actually on that list. It's a list that anybody can get to. Hey, just 2 quick questions for you, Lieutenant Governor. What does trigger a clap, sort of a snapback, if you will, to any sort of restrictions, mask wearing? Is it hospitalizations? If so, what are you looking at?
Yeah. So here's what we're looking at. If any, we have 22 hospital regions in the state. If any region goes to 15% or more of patients with COVID, 15% or more for 7 days in a row, then those local county judges can implement policies they think that's best for that area. But we have restricted them. They cannot close businesses any more than 50%. We've told our school districts, by the way, Harris, to do whatever they choose. If they want to wear a mask for their school districts or not, that's up to them. And let me also make this point about our vaccinations in Texas. We're now about 6 million vaccinations. Well, we have 29 million people, but about 22 million are over 18. So we're very close to being around 30% of vaccinating all people who are adults in Texas, and our numbers are the lowest they've been in 4 months. So this was a policy that was well thought out. And secondly, last month, I had sent a letter to the committee that oversees our vaccinations, and I said, I want to focus on our 65-year-old plus. That's not what California is doing, or New York, or other Democrat states. They're doing it by jobs. And so our 65-year-old population, about 72% of the deaths is in that group. So that has been my focus and the governor's focus, and we've vaccinated almost 45% of everyone over 65, 50% of everyone over 80, and we will have vaccinated probably almost everyone over 65 by the end of March or early April. So we're focusing on the most vulnerable.
Early.
And when you do that, Harris, you keep those people out of the hospital and out of the ICU and out of the morgue. That's not what they're doing in Democrat states. That's not what they've done. So we're focused on the most vulnerable. And when you give those people vaccinations, then your hospital rates aren't not going to spike. Now, anything can happen in the future, and we'll react if it does. But we're doing something that's prudent and is smart, and we're doing something to give people their liberty and freedom back, and people will figure it out. We advise them to wear a mask if they want. We advise them to social distance, wash your hands, all those things. We just took away a mandate, like 15 other states did. That's not Neanderthal
Well, some
thinking,
of them never even had a mask mandate.
Pardon?
Yeah, I mean, some states never had one. So,
yeah, they never had one.
And recent science has shown that even those states with tight restrictions, masks not on that list, but other types of lockdowns, didn't do any better in terms of cases than a place like Florida that didn't have those tight restrictions. So I hear what you're saying. It's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen you this fired up. The president has made this personal, and I get that from you. And we'll check back in with those numbers by the end of March. I mean, your state will be almost fully vaccinated, so I want to get there and get you back. Thank you.
Thank you, Harris. And we take it personally that he's letting people over the border with positive virus into our state. We take that very personal.
Indeed. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. President Biden